would be great. I'm recording it too, by the way. If that's okay.
No worries.
Okay. Because I started recording and asking you.
Yeah. And remember also that we worked with a third party to help us with the whole process. So it wasn't us going out to RFP and finding you guys. We worked with ITAG.
Okay.
ITAG.
Joanne Rang?
Yes.
Okay.
ITAG,
he was
right.
actually on our project, as was Brandy came on during the implementation portion, but her and Dwight were involved in our RFP and solution selection. So we brought them in to look at our organization and our process and recommend the best solution for our organization. So they did their analysis and then helped us write the RFPs, helped us decide who to send it out to, and then pretty much ran the whole RFP demo process with us, as well as the the scoring and the selection based on that.
So what was your, which probably made it, I bet, a bit easier because it can be a lot of work to do that. What was your role at ASCO?
I was a senior project manager. I have done quite a few implementations for them across the board, different types of solutions, HR solution, and a bunch of other stuff. For this project, I actually was the lead PM for all of the integration work. Once the solution was selected, and I was part of the selection process. So because of my historical knowledge of the processes and the integrations, I was included in the whole process.
Right, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So if take us back to the day when the organization first decided to evaluate a new AMS or CRM.
Mm-hmm.
What happened at that point? What was it that essentially triggered that? Hey, we gotta do something here. What was going on in the organization?
Well, we were on IMAS prior, and we were several versions behind, and there was a lot of functionality that we were doing manually, and we had new blood, if you will, in the membership department who were like, this is ridiculous. There's a lot of things out there. They had some experience with other types of solutions, as well as IMAS in their past lives. And they were like, we can find something that can help us improve our processes. And ASCO as a whole was going through that type of analysis across the board as well. So trying to find ways to gain efficiencies in their processing.
Was there something that had triggered that kind of across the board? Was that like was that something driven by the board or?
Yeah, that was one of the goals of the organization that they added, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. As an overall overarching goal for the organization was to review processes and find ways to make improvements.
I'm sorry, Angela, can I just, I just wanted for clarification. So a goal of the organization was to improve operational processes. Am I understanding that correctly?
To review operational processes and look for places for improvement.
Right.
Okay.
And it was kind of that combination, that combined with some new folks in the membership department that had used other systems that gave them greater efficiency and flexibility in their processes, and they were like, hey, this is crazy, we got to do something new. Is that was
Yeah.
that combination?
Yeah, that's how I recall it.
Okay. So was there any specific like pain points that teams were dealing with? Something more specific than sort of around processes that the team really struggled with? You said they were doing some stuff manually outside of the system. What was it?
I think it was more not necessarily outside the system, but there were a lot of things that were being done in Excel spreadsheets and manually exporting data and manually importing data and doing a lot of those types of activities. And when the new folks came in, they were like, why are you still doing that in spreadsheets? Kind of conversation started to happen.
And do you know when folks were, say, exporting or importing, what were they going into like another system or coming from another system?
Yeah, so we had a lot of built out, more automated type integrations, but there were still a lot of things like everything going to the financial systems was basically exporting the data out of IMIS and running an import to load it into Dynamics SL.
So the finance
example, but
yeah,
there were other systems that was happening with, and we had ASCO has a fairly robust database team as well. So some things were, so the integrations were either automated through like APIs and web services, more of an automated SQL job type export import of data, or basically manual, run a report, export the data, and then import it somewhere else. So there were those three levels that existed, but anytime a lot of reporting happened outside of IMIS, so getting the data out to run reports, rather than being able to run reports in there and have them in a viewable, usable format was a frustration. That kind of stuff. So I don't know if I have any more specific examples.
No, that's good. That's perfect. No, it's very helpful because that's honestly, it's the type of thing that you hear over and over again. As we're doing these, we've done. This is the second buyer persona interview. So we're trying to interview people that are involved in that decision-making process, and the first thing you really want to get a sense for is like, why were you guys like at that point where you're like, we got to go find a new system because it's not inexpensive, right? To go out and implement, whether it's time, resources, whatever to do it. But usually there are these triggers where people are just sick and tired of doing things a certain way, right? And sometimes it's new people coming in, other times it's a directive and a strategic objective of the organization. And so it's not unusual to hear what you're saying. And it sort of starts to help us think about what's the content, and we'll give you a little bit more behind the scenes than we would someone externally. What type of content are we then going to create, whether it can be blog posts or webinars or ebooks or whatever, to help people, speak the language of someone that was in your shoes 2 years ago at ASCO, right? Like that's kind of what we're after. So if we can understand pain points, it makes it easier. And we've heard this, and I was at Aptify, and we had done buyer personas at Aptify, and so I'm hearing this also. It's whether it's Altai as a Microsoft Dynamics CRM type solution or a legacy AMS like Aptify, the challenges are still similar, right?
Right, and a lot of other types of systems too. I mean that's usually the biggest drivers for change is the organization has made a mandate, or a lot of times it's someone new coming in and seeing the inefficiencies, because you at the organization don't necessarily see that because you're doing it every day. And you don't necessarily have time to step back and take a look at that.
Yeah.
That was also part of what ITAG helped ASCO with, was to see where the inefficiencies were.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. I'm just looking at my list of questions that that are useful.
And I know a lot of nonprofits will go a similar route to what ASCO did. I can't remember if ITAG reached out to our membership team or the membership team went and found ITAG. I can't remember which way that happened, but as I understand it, a lot of nonprofits especially go the route of using someone like them,
Right.
help them review their processes.
Yep. Okay, so so you guys, you decided to look for a new system, and the main way that you looked for it was working with ITAG, right? Did you guys do it? Did the staff do any evaluation of options? Were there things that you guys did to?
Yeah, ASCO is pretty good about going multiple routes when something like this comes up. I know we did it with the HR system as well, and other departments within the organization do this. The folks in the management have their network that they go out to and say, hey, have you guys done something similar? What have you done? Why have you done it that way? A lot of informal, if you will, recommendations and feedback from peers.
Yep.
So I know they did that in addition to working with ITAG, and got, obviously similar responses with the Altai solution that we got with our RFP process. That was the way to go.
Did you guys use were there any online sources they used outside? Because we've heard that quite a bit too, that people want to go to their peers. That's very much an association world type thing, right? Like,
yes.
Go ask the rest, because everyone can trust each other. It's not like for-profits where no one trusts anybody, right? Like in the association world, they trust each other. They're not competing.
So, you work at this one particular nonprofit this year, but maybe next year you're working for another nonprofit. And so you have the network within that industry, in addition to, like, our HR team, has networking of other HR professionals. So it's not just the AMS peers, it's their, and I think membership has something similar where you can get certified. Like PMs can get the PMI certification, HR folks can get certified that way. So it's that level of peer input as well.
So were there any online sources that you guys used outside of the peer stuff and the vendor selection consultant?
Other than just general searches, web searches, to see what was out there.
And how did that go? Did that have an impact? Doing general web searches have an impact on what you guys were looking at?
I think just to kind of give us the warm fuzzy that what we were getting from ITAG made sense.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like to validate that their selections were the right ways to go.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did you guys use, maybe it was just starting to get more, Review My AMS? Did you look at that website? It might have been early days when that was happening.
I did not. I don't know if the membership folks did. They might have.
Okay.
If they knew it was available.
Gartner,
Forrester kind of searches. I think ASCO has an account with one of them, So just also validating that, you know, the solutions we were looking at were in the right quadrants and whatever on the Forrester or Gartner, whichever one they had, but they did use that as well.
So were there any like companies that were unknown that when you were deciding to the different list of companies you guys were looking at, were there any companies that were unknown to you guys before the search, or were they all kind of like, oh yeah, okay, that's the list?
You mean in terms of our search versus what ITAG gave us?
Yeah, that or both.
I think coming into the process, Altai wasn't necessarily something that any of them had used before. So I think Altai actually was a new, CRM wasn't new, but Altai was.
And not CRM because people are just familiar with the Microsoft ecosystem?
CRM people understanding, we actually had Salesforce at ASCO as well, so which does a lot of the same stuff.
Right.
So I forget what the brand is. Is it Fontiva?
Yeah, there's Fontiva or Nimble AMS.
Yeah, Nimble and Fontiva were the two that we looked at for Salesforce as part of this process, actually, to see, did we want to stick with Salesforce? Did we want to move to CRM? Excuse me. But ultimately, I think the Salesforce implementation didn't go as hoped in terms of adoption, other than we had built out for email marketing as the primary use for it. So I think that might have been where we went wrong with the Salesforce implementation, is we didn't build it out as a CRM AMS. We built it out for email marketing. So
and what was the email platform you guys were using?
ExactTarget.
Okay.
Or Salesforce
Right.
Marketing Cloud nowadays.
Yep.
And I did that implementation, by the way. So,
which is a good, a lot of times you hear Informs, and like ExactTarget is light years ahead of Informs, right?
Yeah.
So I was glad to hear that. When you said ExactTarget, I'm like, well, that makes sense because it's a part of the Salesforce family.
well, but it wasn't at that time.
It wasn't at that time. Okay.
They had the tight integration that they had just built out, which is why we went with Salesforce, because we had already been using ExactTarget.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So what were as you guys were going through the process, what were the results or the outcomes that you were expecting to get from a new platform? Or what did success look like to you guys?
One-stop shop, 360-degree view of a customer, all of the data in one place, or the excuse me, sorry, I'm dealing with some allergies today.
Yeah, no problem. It's okay.
Being able to, if not have all the transactional activity, at least be able to bring in the remaining information for that 360-degree view, so that tighter integration with some of our other transactional systems. Excuse me. Integration capabilities with other systems, either partner systems or other internal built systems. The GL integration was a big deal.
For the finance team, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so one-stop shop, 360 view of the member or prospect, all the data being in one place, tighter integrations.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty. You're hitting it right on the head.
Yeah.
So, and were there any? And would you say that was the same maybe for the membership team or other departments, and what their success looked like for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially around the 360-degree view. and being able to see everything about their customers, right? So they want to be able to see that a member does these other types of activities. They donate, they attend our meetings, they buy our products, they do all this other stuff. That was big for the membership team. Be able to, and then the other big thing for the membership team was that improved process.
Yeah.
Right. So not have as many things managed in Excel.
Yep.
And they were also very open to recommendations for process improvement.
That's good. That's not always the case, right?
Well, and that was that was right, exactly. That was part of the deal with the new blood coming in.
Right.
So the primary, the VP and her direct report, one level down, were both came in and were like, wow, this is a mess in terms of manual processing and areas for improvement. So they were very open to ITAG coming in and reviewing their process and recommending process improvements, as well as the Altai solution doing the same.
So how big was ASCO from a staff and a budget, like the annual budget? How big was it?
Well, 400 staff-wise. I think they're getting close to 500 now.
Wow.
And company-wide. And budget, I couldn't tell you. I know it's in the millions for project work.
Yeah, but they're between $50 to $100 million in budget, I imagine, with 400 staff. That's big.
I don't know if it's 50. I don't know if it's that high. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't think it's that high.
Okay.
I would say closer to like 10 to 20 for new project work. And then.
Yeah, I thought it was in that range.
No, I'm thinking the budget for the organization, like the
oh, gotcha. I see.
total.
Right.
Like.
So capital budget for new project work is probably closer to 10 to 20. But then there's also always the operating budget, right? So that's higher. I couldn't give you an estimate, but you're probably close to right on that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a big organization. I didn't realize it's that big. That's a lot of people, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, were there any? I mean, it sounded like some of the barriers that you might typically get weren't as much there, especially with membership helping to drive a new system. But were there any internal barriers that to selecting Altai?
I guess I wouldn't necessarily make this public, but our VP of IT is kind of a hard man to deal with when it comes to making decisions. The selection was primarily between, making the decision was primarily between him and the VP of the membership department.
Right.
So, it was a little hairy to I don't even know how to say it. He's a difficult man to deal with from a internal organization perspective, as well as from a vendor perspective.
Right.
I don't know, Julie, if you were part of the whole RFP process or anything with them.
I was not, but I've heard some fringe stories.
Yes. I have actually been on, and not for this project, but for other projects, I've been on RFP reviews and demos where he's pretty much yelled at the vendors. Like in a bad way.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. So other than like that, the personality potential conflicts, the only other, and this wasn't part of the selection process, it was more part of the implementation process. The only other major barrier there was the inflexibility of the finance team. They're very particular in that they're used to how it works today, so want anything that comes up to work the exact same way.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah.
Improving process.
Yep. They're not change people, right? Like they have a certain way they do things.
Money people are not change people.
Right. No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Were there any barriers from the sense of like historically there might have been a previous AMS selection, whether IMIS or others that created a barrier to purchasing a new system?
No, I think, they had IMIS for so many years that it wasn't an issue. I think the biggest question, like I said, was do we go with the CRM stuff or do we try and stay with Salesforce? And that wasn't because of the lack of adoption with Salesforce for anything other than email marketing. It wasn't a big deal, other than obviously the cost of maintaining both for a period of time. They're moving off of Salesforce for email marketing now, but.
So in the end, how many platforms did you guys narrow it down to?
I think it was really just between CRM and Salesforce, and both of the two that you mentioned on the Salesforce side were in the running, as well as Altai and one other, and I can't remember the name.
ProTech?
ProTech does not ring a bell.
Okay. Altai and ProTech are the big ones on the CRM side. There might have been on T3 Systems or something.
Broadpoint?
It might have been Broadpoint. Broadpoint sounds familiar, so that was probably what it was.
So what was it that you guys were, so as you're considering the options, what were the capabilities and any values of the vendor that you were comparing as you made a decision?
I'll say from the IT side, one of the biggest things we were looking at informally, if you will, was the customer service side of things post-production. We have had some very frustrating experiences with some vendors in terms of not getting the support, putting in a case and having to wait days and days and days before we even get an email response that, hey, we got your email, kind of thing. So that was one of the biggest things from the IT side we were looking at, as well as the capabilities on the implementation side to make sure that the vendor we selected was going to work well with us. And again, ASCO, unlike a lot of nonprofits, has a very robust IT department, not just on the database side, on the development side as well. So ASCO builds out their own websites. They have a web team. They have an API and web service team. They have a .NET development shop. So they have a lot of capabilities, and probably could have done everything from that perspective internally.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, it came down to more forward thinking. Because it's interesting to hear about the Salesforce and CRM as the two options. It came down to the more, okay, I'm just paraphrasing, right? Because I've heard it before, and just hearing from what you're saying, like, okay, we're not really looking at the legacy AMS systems. We want to look at the two platforms that are gaining a lot of speed here in Salesforce and Dynamics. Was that a discussion? And
and that can grow with the organization, right? Because there's capability to bring in the foundation and donation side on the platform. So, knowing that the platform could do more than what we were initially implementing. So that was part of the decision as well, rather than going with something small. And I think that was addressed early on with, even though the short list was only those things that would sit on one of the two platforms.
Was familiarity with Microsoft, did that help, in the sense that people, everybody, whether you're in finance or membership or events or whatever department, everyone, lots of people at least, have been using the Office suite of products for a long time. Did that have any impact at all?
Not very much. I think it was more that folks had used CRM built systems in the past. Fewer had used Salesforce systems.
Interesting.
So I think everybody went in with the knowledge that they were both platforms. They could both do the job. It was just, which one would give us the bigger bang for our buck in terms of getting the majority of the functionality up front. A lot of it was about how much was customization versus configuration. That was also a factor. And I know CRM is a lot better on you just configure it versus you have to do custom development.
So was there going to be custom was it going to, if you went with Fontiva or Nimble, was it going to require some custom development of code and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, that's what we got out of the demos anyway.
Right.
I don't know if, I don't, and also keep in mind that one of the things that we looked at anyway, or thought about as we were going through the demos, was how prepared and how well was the demo presented, right? Was it geared to what we were looking for? Did you read the RFP? Did you respond to the RFP in the demo? Versus did you just give us a sales demo? Because that kind of went to, is this an organization that would work with us, or is this an organization that's just going to throw something at us and make us live with it? Kind of.
Right. I wouldn't. That's not something that would have occurred to me, but it makes so much sense in what you're saying. Like,
yeah.
Because when someone comes in and they've done their homework, they know about you, they understand, they've read through the RFP closely, and then customize their demo for you, it makes a big difference. I wouldn't have thought of that from how well are they going to work with us down the road. That's where you tie it together. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you put a little bit of thought into it, or are you just throwing us a standard demo that you throw everybody else? Right.
Right. And did that happen with your 4 or 5 finalists?
Several of them actually gave us another sales demo, which we had already had.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, we already saw this. Why are you doing it again? Right.
Right. And when during the first 2 minutes of the sales pitch, we say, we've gotten the sales pitch already, please move on. They continue to give you that. That's when you're like, well, probably not something we want to move forward with, kind of. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So being able to respond to those types of guidance comments during the demo, and be able to work with that.
Yeah. So
And all of that goes to the organization's capabilities in doing that kind of working with you, right?
yeah. Yeah, their interest and desire to work with you, right?
Yeah.
Was pricing an issue at all?
Not between the two. They were all about priced around the same. I think there was one that was way out there that we were like, yeah, unless they, are showing us a Cadillac, we're going to go with the Volvo kind of thing. But for the price, I think one of them was way out there, but the functionality was about the same as everything else.
Do you remember which one that was by any chance?
No.
I'm guessing it might have been Nimble. Because I'm just guessing. I'm not putting anything in your mouth because I've heard that Nimble can be very high priced sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
It might have been. I wouldn't swear to it.
Yeah. But that is interesting that the pricing, because we heard that also before the previous call that we did, the pricing wasn't really an issue. It was more about the functionality. Was there anything about, did you guys evaluate the companies themselves and like the culture of the company or their leadership or their approach or their, core purpose or anything like that? Did that come into account?
It wasn't brought up, but I believe that the the folks on the membership team did look into that as they were researching.
Okay. All right. What else here?
But it wasn't officially like on the score sheet, if you will.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right.
You mind if I ask a question real quick?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Angela, I'm curious, because when you're talking about these different systems, you refer back to CRM, people that use CRM built systems. Now, when you're referencing that, are you saying specifically Microsoft CRM, or does it encompass other CRMs?
Microsoft CRM,
Microsoft. Okay,
whether it was formerly an AMS built on top or just CRM that they had customized.
Gotcha.
That I couldn't answer, but yeah, Microsoft CRM.
Okay, I was curious about that. Okay, thanks.
You have any other questions, Julie? Anything that we missed?
I feel like we covered quite a bit. What would you say, Angela, was there any one thing or maybe any kind of specific combos of things that made Altai stand out to you in a positive way? Or negative way, I guess, for that matter, either.
No, I don't think so. Not during the selection process. I think they did a good job in customizing the demo and doing those soft skill items, if you will, right? Being able to talk to how the support would be continuing and what you guys how that works and what your processes were, and I think the soft skills was the bigger sell than necessarily specific functionality that you guys provided over other solutions. Because pretty much all the solutions we looked at would cover it.
Right.
I think the other piece was a lot of your responses were it's configuration, not customization, right? Which went to bottom line cost.
And what's important about that from that decision making? What's important about it's
Ongoing
configured
support,
versus
right? So customization is custom development. Anytime an new release happens in the core, you have to look at all of those custom items to see if any tweaks need to be made to support that change in the core, right?
Yep.
Versus a configuration item is something that you're changing within CRM, you're tweaking a preference, or you're modifying a field here or there. It's not core custom development.
Yeah. Was that from the IT side of it and the more technical side of it? Do you think that was one of the critical things? Like
that was actually key for both sides.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because our membership team was technical enough to understand the difference between configuration and customization.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And they may have worked at places that were highly customized and know the pain of not being able to or IMUS, you guys probably had customized and were multiple versions behind.
Which is why we were that many versions behind, because the functionality that we had customized to get wasn't going to be available in the newer versions without a lot of additional cost.
So if we were to focus in one way or another, focus on that configuration versus customization, do some thought leadership in it, and maybe some explanation of making sure that people understand the difference between the two as they go through the process. I mean, a bigger organization, they're going to get it. Sometimes smaller, and especially on the membership side, they might not understand what that really means and why it's important. Do you think that's something that would be useful for us to sort of build some content around that to help in the decision-making process?
Yes. I think it'll depend on your audience, right? So, as long as you have some IT folks in those conversations, it'll be useful. If you're talking to all business side folks and they don't have an IT department, you'd have to tweak that conversation slightly, probably, right? And talk more about maintainability versus, the more technical terms.
It's almost like if we wrote like an ebook about configurations and what the difference is between configuration and customization, we could write it for the business side of the house, not necessarily the IT side of the house is probably going to understand that, right?
Yep.
So, and then what the impacts are from a business side and how it can impact the organization and more make it relatable to them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Is there any, just out of curiosity, and I know we're taking a bunch of your time here, but is there some content you would recommend that we develop and talk about on a regular basis that could help people as they go through the process, whether they're kind of blog posts, ebooks, all kinds of content, videos, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Are there topics or thematic areas you think that would be useful if you were searching for a new platform that if we were regularly writing about could help someone in the decision-making process?
I would, focusing on the key AMS functionalities that you guys have might be a good thing.
Yeah.
I think the certification, recertification piece is really good. Some of the other core functionalities that Altai has would probably be helpful.
Okay. Great.
Talk about how the financial piece is more automated.
And who do you think that would appeal to, like that kind of message?
That last one to the finance team, right? So a lot of organizations do really do a lot of manual data transfer into their financial systems. These are the AMS side is typically has a lot of transactional activity that has to get in there. So being able to talk to how automated this can be, is a big factor for finance.
Yeah. And did finance have a role at ASCO in the final decision, or was it mainly, you said before, between the VP of IT and VP of membership?
They had a much smaller role than they probably should have, but also keep in mind that the VP of finance had just been hired when we did the RFP.
Okay.
So the person who actually participated in that process was 2 or 3 levels down than the VP.
Okay.
Because I think her direct supervisor had left already too, so there wasn't anybody in that middle role either. So probably should have been more involved.
Okay. All right. I don't think I've got any other questions. Julie, do you have anything else?
No, I think this covers a lot for me. I know that we're over time for you, Angela, so I really, really appreciate you taking time with us on this.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, it's been really helpful. Thank you so much, Angela.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you. I'll let you go. All right.
All right.
Thanks again.
Have a good one.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.